Imagine getting a $600,000 payout and somehow ending up over $200,000 in debt. It sounds crazy, but today's guests found themselves in this situation. But instead of giving up in defeat, they turned this financial rock bottom into a mission to help thousands of people get out of debt and finally take control of their money, because the truth is most of us aren't really taught how to manage our money. And so when we come across like a large sum of money, or even we just like finally get that high paying job, it can lead down to a slippery slope into debt. So today joining me is Justin Brown Woods, an accredited financial counselor and co-founder of Price of Avocado Toast. Hi Justin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, so today we are going to, of course, get into your story of how you went from a payout to debt. And I also want to talk about some common tips, some strategies about paying off this debt, and just some money habits, and just a little bit of the mindset behind the whole idea of debt, because that's one of the things that I really love about your platform is that you take the shame out of the debt and just focus on like the strategic. So if you found yourself in a little bit of a pickle with debt, today's episode is definitely for you, because we're going to be talking about some tips and strategies. So, Justin, your story starts out with that you actually received a $600,000 lawsuit, if I'm correct, but somehow you went from that and then slid into some debt. So, I want to get like a little bit of the backstory and what you feel like led into basically getting into that debt.
Yeah, totally. You know, it's so funny. Anytime I hear somebody like repeat the numbers, like my heart does still start to pound because I'm like, oh my God, what happened? So, yeah, in 2015, I had just met my wife, Haley. We were 24 and 23, head over heels, cupcake lane immediately. Moved in together after 3 months of dating and combined bank accounts and all that, just head over heels in love. And in that process, actually, I had lost my grandmother to mesothelioma, which is asbestos caused lung
Mm.
cancer. And in the process of her decline, my grandfather started a wrongful death lawsuit on her behalf. And when she passed away, it was finalized and he was awarded a pretty big sum of money. And it went down to heirs as well. So about 3 months into Haley and I dating, I received $600,000 split
Mhm.
among two checks just straight to me in the mail, right? Like deposit in your bank account, it clears in 5 days and you're good. And at that point, you know, I was young, like I said, 24 years old. I was raised by a single mom. Haley was raised by a single mom. We had no financial education, no clue what we were doing with money. I had lived on food stamps and government housing when I was young. So money just wasn't taught in my household. I had no idea about wealth building or anything like that. And because of that, we just started to kind of inflate our life in the ways that we thought we were supposed to. So we put some in a house and we put some in some cars and we tried to furnish the place we were living in. But realistically, all we did was just inflate our lifestyle a ton and spend more than we could and start to blow through the money. And in about three
Mhm.
and a half years, we had spent all of the inheritance and gotten into over $220,000 of debt. That was student loans, credit cards, cars, and a timeshare in Mexico. And
Ooh.
I mean, I know, like, whenever somebody asks me, like, am I the worst you've ever seen? I'm like, no, because that was me. Like, I literally lived it. If you think you're bad, let me run down my list. But so we had everything. And we had all of this debt that we were living with, just trying to make it day to day. But we were both teachers at the time and had
Mhm.
two salaries. And we were just still living under this financial stress. And in 2019, we were expecting our first child. And Haley had beat me home from work one day and stopped by Costco, and she had gotten these pumpkin muffins from their bakery. And when I got home, she's like, hey, there's these really good pumpkin muffins in the kitchen. You should give them a try. And
Mhm.
rather than be excited that my wife got these muffins, I argued with her about it. I was like, hey, we don't have
Mhm.
$7 in our bank account for you to be buying off the grocery list. And that was when we realized that there was this underlying stress from the debt that we were carrying that was now affecting our relationship and was soon going to be affecting our kids. And so we sat
Mhm.
down and said, we need to start figuring this out. And that was when we started to budget, really get serious about tracking our expenses and pay off our debt. And in about 18 months, we were able to pay off $132,000 of the debt, get completely consumer debt free. All that we have left are our student loans. But we were able to essentially say, like, we're not going to live with debt anymore. We don't want to have this in our life. And since then, we've, made it our mission to help others as well see that they don't have to live with their debt and that their debt doesn't get to define them. They get to still have value in the world, and their worth to the world isn't just the number in their bank account.
Yeah, I love that message because I follow you on threads and like I always love your posts about that type of mindset because yeah, that is something that when I first started learning about finances, I would see that and it made you feel like guilty. And it's very common. You'll hear about people that like to win the lottery and all that stuff and they just blow right through it, but it's because we just don't understand how money works. And we do fall into that trap too of like just trying to, oh yeah, I got to go get the house or let me buy myself this nice car or whatever. And so, yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap. I didn't get into too much debt, but I did spend a lot of money when I finally got a nice stable paycheck. I was in the military and that I knew first and the 15th I was getting that money and I didn't have to worry about losing my job or anything. So then I would just buy like my Gucci shoes, a nice purse or whatever. And then I was like, you know what, like maybe I should stop. And then that's when I started learning about a little bit of budgeting. And one thing I will say, I always made sure that my bills were paid first, but I just blew. I didn't do anything about savings or investing or anything. Technically, I did with the 401k, but I definitely didn't max it out. so, so I want to go a little bit into the budgeting because I know a lot of people like hear that and it's like I don't want to live frugally and well first I want to understand like what was your mindset when y'all sat down and created a budget. Did y'all go through that and what kind of budget or restrictions, I guess not restrictions because I don't want to put out restrictions, that sounds bad, but what was your plan like at that time?
Yeah, you're right. When we started, we did live in a very restricted budget kind of lens. We thought that a budget meant deprivation, cut everything, get it out of the budget, throw everything you can towards debt. And that's why we were able to pay off so much money so fast, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't lie about that. $132,000 in 18 months is a lot of money. And we
Mm-hmm.
did crazy stuff on the budget journey to get there. But we also realized in that journey that like that's probably not the healthiest way to look at budgeting, right? Because a lot of people do have the negative connotation that budgeting says I can't enjoy my money. Where we started to flip the script was realizing what does it look like if a budget was positive and what does that actually say? And what that says is that you get to determine what you value in life and where it shows up in your budget. And when you do that, you can say no to the other things that don't really matter to you. And that's an activity or an exercise that we do with all of our clients as well. Like we will sit
Mm-hmm.
down and say, what are your 5 core values in life? And then we'll just stack it up against your budget and say, show me where these things show up in your budget. Because if they're not, we have a problem. You need to be living out your values. You need to live in a way that lights you up and brings you joy. And also, let's get the things out of your budget that you don't care about. So if you don't care about clothes, let's stop shopping at these certain places. Or if you don't really care about concerts, let's find ways that you can tell your friends you don't really want to go anymore. Whatever that might be, let's figure out the values in life that you have so that you can say yes to the things you want and no to the things that you don't want. And I think that's what's missing from budgeting. Let me rephrase that. A lot of people nowadays are coming around to that idea. But the
Mm-hmm.
old idea was that you had to cut everything and you had to hate your life. And we did. We cut everything back in the journey. And then we slowly integrated it back into our lives as we resolved some of those money issues we were having.
Yeah, I love that because that I would say because my next question was going to be like, what would have been the first step? And I feel like that is a great first step of first figuring out what your values and what your goals are. Because a lot of times when you start listening about like budgeting or whatever, they tell you what you should be focusing on. And for example, not to get too much into real estate because we were saying like, oh, do we want to get into real estate? But when they talk about a little bit of budgeting, make sure like, oh, you max out, like for example 401k. That's not my priority. My priority is real estate. And so same thing with budgeting, like they might not be focused on student loans right now because that's maybe a future problem. Maybe they need to get down this higher priced interest rate that's hurting them right now, but
Yeah.
you might hear some financial people say, no, focus on this or whatever. So, yeah, I'm glad they are helping people figure that out as well.
You hit it right there too. Like when we look at different values, if we're looking at something like, I've got many clients that say security or stability is a value for them. Well, how does that show up? That might look like paying off debt, or that might look like owning your home versus renting. And those are two
Mm-hmm.
different costs or different ideas within a budget, and they require different things within a budget. Maybe you got to save for some of the home maintenance, or maybe because you're a renter, you're able to spend a little less in some areas, whatever it might be, right? Like stability or security as a value can look totally different for different people. And so that's why it's really important that we can drill down on those things and say, where is this showing up in the budget? What does this need to look like? Because, yeah, by all means, a lot of personal finance creators can be like, yeah, go get your 401k match. But if somebody's actually, I have this other investing strategy that really lights me up that I'm finding success with, and I have my eyes on this duplex or something a year from now, maybe I want to
Mm-hmm.
keep more cash coming into my paycheck so I can save up for the down payment there or for the closing cost there, whatever it might be. So it's important that we really identify those values personally and say, where does this need to show up in my budget and how can I live within this value?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to get a little bit because you touched on a little bit as you were going through of how it was affecting y'all about feeling bad about the debt. And I'm sure that comes along, well, that comes up, right? Whenever you are helping somebody out, when they are faced with that like reality, look, this is what is happening now. This is what you're spending stuff on. I'm sure a lot of like shame and guilt comes up. And I want to get your tips on how to help somebody, or for someone that's listening and they have that shame or guilt, what would you say to them to kind of overcome and still face what for their budgeting?
Yeah, great question. This is something actually that I've started exploring a lot more recently because as we've started to get into our work deeper as financial counselors, and Haley is trauma of money certified. So she's gone through a program that kind of talks
Mm-hmm.
about money traumas and how they show up and how they fester, if you will. It's really fascinating that we know that there are physiological, meaning like body responses to debt. It's not even just like the emotional side, but there's physiological responses, right? Higher blood pressure, sleepless nights causing irritability, causing issues at work, lack of focus, all of those things, right? We know
Mm-hmm.
that what debt causes. And so it's fascinating that as a society, we see those things. We know that the majority of people have debt and we're feeling those things. And yet we all still feel shame and guilt around our debt. We all still have this negative connotation, even though many of us are still living with debt in some capacity. And so I've
Mm-hmm.
started to consider, what does it look like to live in what I call the both and kind of relationship there, meaning two things can be true at once. And those things can be, I hate my debt and I'm really frustrated by the fact that I have debt. And also, I'm going to build a budget for the first time and I'm really excited to start tracking this. Or I hate that my debt is holding me back from traveling and I'm proud that I'm somebody who's working to pay it off. Because what we do is
Mm-hmm.
we end with just the first part. We just say, I'm pissed that my debt has me not able to experience things, period. And we just
Mm-hmm.
live in that statement. We let that kind of consume us, where I think we need to also recognize the complexities of it all and say, and also I'm working towards something else. And it's not like a toxic positivity. It's not like just being like, a bunch of woo, I'm just going to think positive and money affirmation my way out of this. That's not going to happen, right? You got to pay down your debt. But if we can recognize that we're trying and we're still human and we're allowed to mess up and we're allowed to not be perfect and we're allowed to get it wrong and retry, like that is the way that I think we move through debt, because
Mm-hmm.
debt's not going anywhere. It's the way that our system is set up. People are given every opportunity every single day to take on new risk with debt and credit. And it's not going anywhere. So we have to figure out how can we live within this system and still give ourselves the grace to be human. So that's the first thing I would say is just figure out, and I call it like a both and statement of what
Mm-hmm.
two things can be true. And then just tell yourself that frequently. I don't like that I have debt and also I'm working to pay it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I've had some like family members that had that and they were like, don't even want a little bit of financial avoidance because they just felt that shame and guilt that they just don't even want to look at it, and they it makes them feel defeated. What's the point? Like, I'm so
Totally.
into this debt, so like what's the point? It's just going to continue, especially like those debts that have that high interest and they're already like struggling to pay bills, so then they're trying to pay a little bit, but it just seems they're not making any headway. And I
Totally.
feel like that's, yeah, that just makes them just not even want to try. So yeah, a lot of it is a mindset like, yeah, you're maybe not making as much as progress as you thought. Matter of fact, I think I saw one of your thread posts that somebody had said like, I paid off, I forget what the exact number, but it was kind of a low number, let's say $50, and you're like, but you paid it off. Like you need
Yeah.
to, I love that thread that you said like, hey, you're saying it like, oh, I paid only $50. No, you paid $50. You made progress. So it's changed that mindset of the little accomplishments towards paying off this debt. So yeah, that definitely helps. So I definitely, and I still deal with that. That's something that you just learn to deal with. Like, and
Oh
it's a
yeah.
lot of that mindset. I had to tell myself, it's funny because I best, but when it comes to like consumer, like I could go and buy another rental property and I'll have a little bit of financial anxiety, but I'm like, okay. But then I go spend money on my credit card, even though like I know I have a plan to pay it off and I'm using it strategically. But if I see it go a little bit too high or whatever, it still comes up.
Yep.
So I still have
Totally.
to tell myself, like, no, you're fine. You just need to learn a little bit of strategy. So
Yeah.
it comes up.
We had something similar like that happen where we bought a car, the payment was going to work for us, and we didn't want to part with a ton of money, right? We
Hmm.
had money in the bank to buy the new car, but we were like, let's just do this payment. Let's keep more cash in our bank account right now. Times are tumultuous. Let's just keep money in there. We got the first statement in the mail and we were like, no, we're just going to pay this off. And we paid the car off. Like the moment we got the first statement asking for the $300 payment or whatever, because yeah, like we still had that, like risk tolerance was still really low in certain things like consumer debt, credit cards or cars, auto loans, things like that. Versus if I were to go buy a home right now, I would feel
Hmm.
totally different. I would feel like, oh, I'm willing to take on that risk. I'm willing to take on that mortgage or whatever because I see where this might go in the future. It's interesting how we
Yeah.
have those different dynamics in different spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit back to the budgeting because a lot of people who try budgeting, they quit within the first few months. So as somebody that, you definitely help a lot of people. And so I'm curious to see like what is the common theme that you feel or see is one of the biggest reasons that they are just not like sticking with their budget.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that we've noticed in our time working is that a lot of folks now have shortened attention spans. And that means that they struggle with a lot of the budget practices that are traditionally out there. Haley and I, my wife Haley, our personality types, we are very goal oriented. So when you give us a
Mhm.
budget, it's very easy for us. Not everybody lives like that. Not everybody has that structure. And so one of the things we recommend is something that also works really good for folks that maybe have ADHD or are neurodivergent, which is two separate accounts. You've got a bills account and you've got a spending account. And the way that you set that up is that anything that is a fixed bill or that you have to pay electricity, water, garbage, any debt payments, your home cost, auto loan, whatever, it's all out of one space. And then the flexible spending, so groceries, dining out, entertainment, things you want to do for fun, all of that comes from a separate account. And so you don't even really have to budget. You just have to say, what's the money from my direct deposit paycheck that needs to go to this account? And what's the money that needs to go to this account? And so all of my bills are funded no matter what. And then I have money to spend so that
Mhm.
the budget practice is really just checking your bank account and saying, how much money do I have in my spending account? And can I spend on this thing? And there's hard times where I'll meet with a client and they've got 4 days until payday and they're like, I can't go out this week and I need to save this for groceries because I don't have anything in the house and I don't get paid again until Friday. And that's a
Mhm.
hard practice, but it's one that I think is necessary sometimes to figure out what we're doing with money. So that's one of the biggest things I tell people is if you're traditionally caught in the cycle where every budget keeps failing, try
Mhm.
something much more simplistic. Just two separate bank accounts. Only one is for spending, everything else gets your bills, and then you don't really have to budget. I will say, if somebody's on a debt payoff journey, I want you to be a little bit more in depth. I want you to be tracking things a little bit deeper. And that just takes, unfortunately, like putting your nose down and doing stuff that sucks. Sometimes we just have to be like, this sucks. I hate this, but I'm going to make time for it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. This the short attention span, and I will see there's like a lot of like templates out there and budgets and stuff, which is great. I think it's a good starting point for like you're saying to figure out, okay, I need to have 500 in the checking account and 500 in this bucket or that bucket or whatever. So it's good starting point, but I definitely have found that using separate accounts for everything, I have account for myself, for the house bills, for my savings, for my investments. Like there's just accounts everywhere. But it works for me because I've already automated everything and I don't really, that's less mental workload for me. And it
Yes.
has made it so much easier to stick with. Now, it's not perfect because sometimes I do find myself like, oh man, I shouldn't have spent that much this time, but it's okay.
Sure.
I'm fine. Whereas I did try like let me log in today. And even the apps, I was like, let me get on this app and put that I spend the $20 or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just so tedious. And I think with the lifestyle that most of us have, we are just trying to survive, and we're just working all the time. And then we got
Yeah.
family life and everything like that. There's just a lot of times it's just not realistic for a lot of people, but still a great starting point to give you an idea of how much or the guidelines for your budget. But
Yeah.
managing, I think it's a different thing.
Totally. And I think one of the big issues is that, unfortunately, for a lot of couples, if they're male female couples, the female takes on all of the like budgeting practice. And so the
Mhm.
male might be earning money, but the female has all of the budget and all of the tracking of the expenses. That woman is probably also the primary parent. So she's probably
Mhm.
also scheduling all the doctor's appointments, doing the meal plan, making sure the kids have shoes that don't have holes in them and clothes that fit, figuring out who needs shampoo or soap in the bathroom. So she's already got a ton of mental load anyways. You add one more thing on top of it, like budgeting, and it just crumbles. There's just not
Mhm.
enough time in the day. There's not enough mental bandwidth. And that's one of the things that I do a lot in our practice. Haley will oftentimes funnel couples to me so that I can meet with them and be like, hey, man, as a male partner, you need to hold up your end of the bargain and start doing a little bit more here. It's not as simple as just earning money. You also need to be having conversations with your wife and helping with the budget and understanding what the budget looks like and looking at it before you go spending at the gas station because you want to get seeds and a rock star on the way to work. It's not that simple.
Mhm.
So I think that's the other issue that comes into play with the mental load, right? There's just not capacity for it, and partners need to step up.
Yeah, that is one thing. And I'm sure that comes up a lot because I was looking at a TikTok, and I don't want to say like their name because I don't even know if they're a good person or not. But I see them on TikTok randomly. He's a financial counselor, but most of his TikToks are like the couples fighting and stuff. So I'm
Mm,
sure you have your
yeah,
own
yeah.
dealing with some like relationship counseling. And so I know you mentioned one telling the male partner because statistically or whatever is usually falls on the woman.
Totally.
So what's another, I guess, tip since we're on the topic of relationship and money for a couple, a relationship? Because I know I had to struggle with at the beginning when my husband and I merged our finances together, especially since I was on one side where I'm just like, I just do my own thing. And so then when I had to bring somebody else, and it was like, and he was at a different level. He had some debt, but I didn't have any debt. So then it was just like chaotic at the beginning to like
Yeah.
merge our finances. So what is some of the things that you tell couples, especially when one is definitely doing a little bit better off than the other?
Yeah. One of the big things I try and remind people is just the structure around like when you talk about money. So recognize when your partner's overstimulated, recognize when it's not a good time to talk about money, and take a breath and think of a better time. Right? Is there another time when we can talk about this that's not when you're putting dinner together or the golden hour and the kids are screaming or I'm exhausted from work, whatever it may be, right? And the second thing I
Mhm.
like to tell people is I will say bookend your conversation with good things. So before you have your money meeting, set up a money meeting like, hey, Saturday morning, we're going to sit and talk about money. Bookend it at the front with like your favorite breakfast together, whether you cook at home or go out. Then have your meeting and then end it with something really cool. Hey, now we're going to go grab happy hour drinks or something. Or if it's late at night, now we're going to like sit and watch the favorite show we've been wanting to catch up on or this movie we've always wanted to be watching, right? Like do
Mhm.
things around it so that you don't just end with the money conversation or start and end there, right? It's jolting to the nervous system to come in and have somebody be like, what were you spending on Amazon? What is this? Where does it go in the budget? And then you're like, okay, good night. Like that's jolting for anybody. We need to have an on ramp and an off ramp to that conversation.
Mhm.
So that's one of the big things I say. And then the other thing is like budget in fun money. It's really easy to like say, hey, let's put $100 into our budget if we've got it so that you can spend and I'm not going to question you and I can spend and you're not going to question me. Whether that's I'm going to go to the casino with my brother and play blackjack this night, or you're going to buy this a ton of books at Barnes and Noble, or you're going to go to the casino and I'm buying books, like whatever it is, just budget in for it and give each other the grace to not ask questions, to just let your partner
Mhm.
spend comfortably and be happy with their joyful purchase. That's another big practice that I try and instill with all of my clients. You got to have some fun money in there so that your partner can't ask you about it and it's just allocated money.
I definitely had to learn that, to learn when to have these conversations because of my anxiety and financial anxiety. I definitely had the habit, especially early on, of, yeah, having the conversations at the wrong time. Like, why this happened and this and that. And I'm like freaking out. And yeah, I had to learn to, like, all right, chill out. Let's figure this out. And so it's gotten so much better. I still catch myself doing it sometimes, and then I stop myself. It's like, never mind, never mind. It's just me. I'm anxious right now. It
Yeah,
usually is because I'm overstimulated or something. So it just like
totally.
piles up. So yeah, it's still work in progress. But I do want to be able to get a little bit into a little bit of the strategies of the debt paid down.
Yeah. We typically teach within like the four main strategies. So many people know about the snowball and the avalanche. Those are the
Mhm.
main ones online that I think most people know, either starting with your lowest debt, working up to your highest total debt and kind of paying it off in time, or your highest interest down to your lowest interest. But one of the ones that we really like to focus on more so is what we call the emotional baggage method. This was one
Mhm.
that we've learned from our mentor, Kelsa Dickey. She created the Financial Coach Academy, which is a training platform for financial coaches.
Uh-huh.
And this is where we identify with a client the debt that keeps them up at night. The one debt that has this emotional weight to it that it doesn't matter the number or the interest rate, they just want it gone. So we're thinking like if you owe your parents $2,000 and they're like 0% interest, but every time you go to a dinner at their house, they mention this money, that's emotionally taxing and we want to get rid of it.
Mhm.
Or you're still paying off the divorce attorney from your lousy ex and you don't want to be thinking about them anymore. Let's pay that off first. And then we'll worry about Chase Bank and Citi and all these other debts. So that's one of the ones we really like to work in because it gives people the emotional reprieve that we're looking for, this kind of holistic wellness around debt. The other one that we really like to work on when we're coaching with somebody is what is known as the debt lasso method. And that's traditionally just like debt consolidation loans or the balance transfer cards. And the reason we like to work with that is because many of our clients come to us having already tried that. They're stuck in a debt cycle where they keep taking out loans, paying them off, racking up their credit card debt, taking out a loan, paying it off, doing it again and again. Where we want to show them that you can do this in a strategic way if you're working with a coach, if you have an accountability system, you have a strong budgeting system, and you see where you need to go in the future. And so for many of our clients, that's a strategy that works really well. I just had a client the other day who has $13,000 of credit card debt at
Mhm.
27% interest. They
Mhm.
applied and got approved for 11,500 of it to be moved to a 0% interest card. So we're going to move their debt to that 0% card. We're going to speed run paying off the 2,000 they owe on the card that still has interest. And then we'll start making lump sum payments toward the 0% card since it's not getting charged interest. So that's a strategy
Mhm.
that can really work for a lot of people as well. But realistically, the main thing is pick a strategy and stick to it. A lot of people just do extras here, extras there, extras here. Don't do that. That's the one thing I say don't
Mhm.
do. Have a targeted strategy where all of your extra money goes towards one debt and then move to the next and then move to the next, whichever order you go in.
I love that. I think we do need the paying off the debt that's really stressing you out, because that definitely motivates you and reduces whatever stress that debt has over you. I have two last questions for you. And I want to know, since a lot of people with the economy and everything like that's going crazy, and they're starting to feel overwhelmed with money right now. So, what's one message you would like the listeners to walk away with from today's episode?
I would say that you are not the number that's in your bank account and you're working within a system that has certain rules in the game and certain things that are happening that are outside of your control. For example, you cannot change how gas prices rise or drop unless you're like voting on a tax on it, right? You cannot change the prices at the grocery store. What you can do is be diligent in your meal planning. What you can do is find ways to enjoy time together with your friends that don't cost you money. Try and find the ways that you can still exist and have joy that don't cost you money so that you don't have to play by somebody else's rules. I guess we do still live in this system. You're going to have to. But if you can find these other things that still bring you joy outside of having to spend a ton of money, then it's going to make things a little bit easier right now. One of the first things, again, that you have to do there is just like remove your personal worth from the number in your bank account. You can't believe that that's, like your number that dictates who you are as a human being. The second thing that I would tell you is that recognize that the debt payoff journey takes a long time, right? I paid off $132,000 in 18 months. That was during COVID. I couldn't go anywhere anyways. My daughter was 3 months old. I didn't want to take her anywhere. Now I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. My life looks drastically different. If I had to pay off that debt now, I don't know how it would look. So just recognize that everybody's journey is different. Everybody's journey takes time, and you'll get to the end at some point.
Awesome. Technically, I have two more questions because the
Sure.
first one is, since you do offer services to help people that are dealing with debt or just budgeting or just managing money, what services do you provide and where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks for the plug. So, we have a couple different ways you can work with us. We have a one-to-one counseling program where we meet with clients over Zoom, make sure their budget's looking good, make sure that their debt payoff strategy is working for them, and that they're also finding ways to spend on the things they value and that bring them joy. We then also have a super low cost group program. We built our group program 2 years ago in an attempt to help folks that maybe have higher debt and don't have the capacity to work with us one to one, but still want financial counseling support. So those are the two ways that we work with people in a paid way. But we also do, of course, have all of our social media where people can find us. We've got our newsletter and freebies we give away there all the time. So I would say if people need support that's outside of even just working with us in a counseling program, find us on social media at Price of Avocado Toast, and they can see all the cool stuff we do just for free.
Awesome. And my last question is a fun question because I have, again, follow you on Threads, and I do know that you are currently watching Game of Thrones.
Yep.
So, one, I want to know what season and episode you are in, and
Yep.
if anybody hasn't seen Game of Thrones, it's probably spoilers.
Spoilers
I
here.
want to
Yeah.
know, yeah, I want to know so far who is I guess the death that you are more bummed out, and who are you waiting for to just
Yes.
be taken out?
Great question. So I just finished season 4 last night. I watched
Okay.
episodes 9 and 10 last night. So the death that I was most shaken by, definitely Egret. Her die with Jon Snow last night is like seared into me right now. I was so sad. I was like really hoping that they would have this really beautiful redemption story. And yes, I know they're married in real life, which is cool, but like I was hoping that maybe she would leave the wildlings and like he would leave the Night's Watch and they would just have this like beautiful love story, and that just got snuffed out like immediately. And I was like, oh damn it. So that was really sad. The person that I'm hoping, oh man, there's just something about Cersei Lannister that like whenever it comes, I'm sure it's going to come at some point. Whenever it comes, it's just going to be such vindication. I mean, she's such a good actress. Lena Headey, I think is her
Mhm,
name. She's done such a good job
mhm.
with the role. I see why she like is beloved. Great character, terrible human in the show, and I'm just really excited for whenever that comes.
Awesome. All right, I won't say anything, but yeah, man, I love Game of Thrones because it does, like, you'll be rooting for somebody and they're like, "Ah," and then you'll be rooting for someone to not be there, or mixture in between. It's
Yeah.
just, I really love that about Game of Thrones. So,
Oh yeah, first episode I was like, "Oh, I hate Jaime Lannister." And now I'm in going into season 5 and I'm like, "Why is this guy growing on me? Like this shouldn't be happening. He was supposed to be dead 2 seasons ago. What's going on?" It's just wild.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I'll have all the information linked down below so you can reach out and definitely follow them on social media. Other than that, I will see everyone in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for having me. See ya.